Welcome to the Company Move podcast, where we explore what life outside of the film and television industry could look like by talking to folks who have made the leap. I'm your host, Rennie Pollack, a union second assistant camera person currently living and working in Chicago, Illinois. I'll be learning and growing along with you, so let's go. Company's on the move. Kathryn Brunet worked as a camera assistant in Los Angeles from 2012 to 2018. She now lives in London, working as a reference librarian at the British Library Special Collections. She also teaches workshops on Western palaeography, medieval manuscript production, and printed book history. She completed a master's degree in library and information science from UCLA in 2020 and a master's degree in medieval studies from University College London in 2023. She has many hobbies, including visiting historical sites around the UK, pub trivia, learning French, playing tennis, historical dancing, and recently learning to crochet. Welcome to the Company Move, Kathryn Brunet.
My name is Kathryn Brunet. I live in London and I am working as a reference librarian in the Special Collections at the British Library. Special Collections is a department where all of the historical, rare, and valuable materials are held in the library. So I am partially responsible for who is able to use those materials. And I'm also, my biggest responsibility is helping readers find those materials and discover more materials, because sometimes they go in and they don't have any idea what they want. And sometimes they have some idea and then I can help them along their research process. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I was not doing that how many years ago now? It's been 6 years, I guess, since I last AC'd anything.
Wow.
Yeah. When you messaged me, I was like, I'm going to have to write a bunch of memories down because I'm starting to forget things.
You're such a librarian now too. You're all prepared.
I'm very organized. Yes, I wrote my notes. So I grew up in a really small town. I'm from Indiana, a very rural area, small, friendly, tight-knit community. Town has 2 stoplights. I always say that I grew up between a cornfield and a turkey farm. That's where my parents' house is. So a very small community. Most of my family is still living there, so I like to visit twice a year as I can.
Nice.
And I decided to go from a very small town to a very big university for undergrad. I went to Indiana University and I decided to just go for it and major in film production, even though I'd never made anything really. And I learned a lot really fast. It's not a film school, it's like a communications department. So we kind of did what we could with what we had. They do have an equipment lab and everything, so we made a lot of movies. So that really sparked the interest there. And I went in thinking I wanted to be a director. I was really interested in theater and acting and working with actors. So I did a theater minor, and about halfway through my undergrad, I realized I was much less interested in that and much more interested in working the camera and working with the gear. Kind of went headfirst into the cinematography part instead. And so when I graduated, I moved home for 2 weeks and then I packed up my Corolla, and my parents also drove their car to LA. We drove in a little caravan. It was really sweet. They were very supportive. So we drove out to LA together, and I had a friend who was already working. She'd been out there for a year working in post-production. So I slept on her couch. And all my stuff, everything I owned is in the Corolla. And I know lots of people have that story.
I did that one. I basically lived out of my car for about 3 months. Thankfully, people allowed me to sleep in their apartments. But
yeah, I couch surfed for, I think, June, July, August, September, until I could sign a lease with my friend whose lease was up. So
very familiar welcome to LA story.
Yeah, and really starting from almost nothing. I picked LA because I knew like 3 people who lived there, and I knew like 1 person in New York. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to LA. it seems like there's more film schools, more opportunities there, which turned out, I think, to have been the right decision. Because my first year, I just worked for free on as many things as I could. Just all the film school shoots, the Mandy jobs.
Mandy.com. I haven't thought about that in a
Everything I
while.
could find, you know how that is. Just
Hmm.
slowly building up people who are also working for free or in school, and they start getting small jobs and they bring you on. So yeah, I spent the next 2 years building up those 100 days to get into the union. And I think it was in my third year in LA that I joined as a second AC. In the beginning, I did first sing and seconding kind of 50-50, but then once I joined the union, you kind of like pick your persona, and that's what people know you for. So
Hmm.
I was kind of happy with that. I enjoyed the second's responsibilities. I liked being a second. I liked pulling focus, but I kind of didn't want to do the rest of what a first does. So I
That's
was
what's
very
held me
happy
back
doing
for
that.
years is the stress
Uh-huh.
of, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody knows when you mess up. No one knows when you've done it perfectly, but everyone knows when you haven't.
Yeah, so I worked mostly, I was lucky to get into TV. I know that's not always the case with people's background. I got brought into some TV shows early in my union career, and that's kind of what kind of brought me through for the next 3 years. I worked on Transparent and Glow, which was really fun, and
Mm.
Zach Galifianakis' show Baskets, and a season of Workaholics. But I was reflecting on this. I did so many music videos, and and those are the tough ones. And it's hard because I think music videos are some of my favorite things I ever worked on because they're so creative and beautiful and fun and interesting, but they're also grueling. And they're just, the call is, hi, do you want to work 18 hours in the desert? Those were tough ones, but I feel like I enjoyed the artistic aspect of those, even though TV was definitely a much more stable gig than the music videos. So yeah, that's sort of what I was doing for my 6 years in LA as a camera assistant. Um, and then in I guess my fifth year in 2017, that was when I started thinking about doing other things. I don't know. I started feeling kind of dissatisfied with the routine of it. I wasn't really fulfilled by the work as much because it is so technical and less
Mhm.
creative. I really enjoyed being part of the team. It is very fulfilling to like create something together. But I found the schedule and the unpredictability of freelance very difficult to cope with. I'm very organized, as I'm a librarian now. I'm very organized, and I really wanted to be able to control parts of my life that I couldn't control as a freelancer. I also knew very early on that I didn't want to raise kids as a freelancer. I saw how parents struggled in the industry, and oftentimes the mom is just sort of by herself at home with children because mom and dad were freelancers. And when I was in the camera department, oftentimes the dad was the camera operator that I met, and his wife had
Mhm.
to give up her career to raise their kids because someone had to be home with them.
Right.
And if he was making more money, then that's how that happened. And I didn't want that freelancer schedule for my family because I came from a really supportive, loving background, and I really wanted to be there for my kids. So that was something I knew early on that I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to work around. And luckily, my partner is on the same page as me with that too. He still does work in the film industry, but in LA he was a DIT. So we talked about that very early on, that we couldn't be freelance and also be there the way we wanted to be there for our kids.
Is
So
he still in the industry
yeah,
in London?
yes, he is. So since London has such a big film industry, this is part of why it's worked, our move here. He works in visual effects now with the volume. I'm not sure, are you familiar with the volume?
Oh yeah, I worked on
Yeah.
Ahsoka.
Okay. Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
and that I think season 2 of that is coming over to London, so maybe
Oh,
he'll
really?
be
Okay.
working with that.
Yeah, he learned how to do it. He learned that job working part-time at ILM on the Obi-Wan TV show
Okay,
um, while he was DITing. So he kind of had that background. So when we made this jump over here, he already had that knowledge going in, which was really lucky for us. So we
that's
could sort of
great.
make a transition without having to jump completely to a new department.
Great.
Um, the other reason I really felt like I needed to start thinking of a new career, a new direction is something that you've mentioned before with your shoulder. I had a spine injury in 2016.
Mm,
I've always had a back problem. My lower back has always been an issue. I had a spine surgery when I was 21. I had a herniated disc, which many camera people are familiar with the herniated disc.
yeah, I've been lucky not to have that, but I am
Yeah.
very afraid that that
So
will happen.
it is very scary. It's very debilitating. My first one was when I was 21, out of the blue, not caused by anything in particular, which was really eye-opening for me that that could happen to me. And then I had the same disc rupture again when I was 26 in the middle of workaholics. So I had to go on disability and miss the second half of the season. So that also really made me feel mortal. I was like, okay, I've been lugging cameras and sticks around and heavy lenses and packing trucks, and my body is warning me that you're even at 26, you need to start making other plans.
Right.
So I had that in my mind. I don't like to use that as the reason that I stopped doing this job, because I did really enjoy the job and it wasn't just a physical reason. It was also, I wanted to be intellectually challenged in a different way,
Mhm.
um, and have more fulfillment out of my career. But that was definitely something I took really seriously and knew that in my 40s, I wasn't going to be able to do that very heavy lifting that I was doing a lot of in my 20s.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. I'm 42.
Yep. You're very strong. I remember being that strong.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a weakling now. I don't have those camera muscles anymore.
That brain is the muscle you're working with now.
I thought about what I could do. And when I listened to the other episodes, I was like, I remember being in this, what am I going to do? What can I do? What do I like? There's a million options. You don't
Hmm.
even know all the jobs that exist. I have always loved history, but I didn't want to be a high school teacher. And um, that was kind of like the only history job that really like stuck out to me, is like, oh, that's a definite career path, is becoming a teacher. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was like, well, what else could I do with it? I don't want to get a master's in history and then not have anywhere to go.
Hmm.
I want to have some sort of clear career goal. So I wasn't really sure what I should do. And this, I don't remember how this came about, but I don't know if you know Jen O'Leary. She's Jen Hashida now. She was a
I don't think
first
so.
and a second. She was a camera assistant when I was ACing, and she and I had worked together and we really got along well. And she also quit ACing, and you may want to interview her actually. She
I'll
quit
get her information
ACing.
after this.
She's wonderful. Yeah, she's great. She quit ACing, um, I think a year before I started thinking about this, but I knew this was happening. And she decided to go back to school at UCLA to get a master's in library and information science and become a film archivist.
Oh,
And
cool.
a very cool job. She's a really cool person. And this was perfect for her. And she really loved it. And so I am the queen of informational interviews. I love to take people out and ask them about their jobs and their lives. I've done so many of them. And so this was the first one I ever did. I asked her if she would come out for breakfast and we could talk about what she had decided and how she got to that point. And so she talked to me about it and about film archiving, and it sounded really cool. But I remember thinking, I'm not really into film preservation. That's probably not the route I want to go, but it does sound really interesting and perfect for her. And then I remember at the end of the breakfast, she mentioned something called the California Rare Book School. And and I was like, excuse me, what was that? What's a rare book school? And so this like set me off in a direction like full speed. And I literally haven't turned back from this direction. I found out what the rare book school was, which is a professional, it's like a continuing education sort of program that UCLA is in partnership with. They teach classes on special collections related fields. So I took a sort of introduction history of the book class in 2017, and I just loved it. I just fell in love with it. And I remember discovering that there are librarians who work with historical materials and who teach with university students and are really active with these historical items. But they also work as librarians. They're not professors, they're not teachers. And I was like, this is a career that I can absolutely see myself enjoying. This is a master's program. This is 2 years, not a PhD, not a history degree where I don't have a specific path. This is like almost a technical kind of training to be a librarian. I think I'm going to love this. So I applied the following spring, I think, for it. And I had to take a statistics class and it was terrible.
The requirements that you have to take.
Oh, so terrible. But yeah, so then I AC'd for the last time in August of 2018. And I love to tell this story. Freelancing is just so irreverent with you. It never cares about your feelings because even on my last week, I was doing this job, and the sound guy was so nice. He knew that I was almost done ACing. He's like, "Do you want to take a picture with the slate? Like, is this your last job?" And I was like, "No, I have another one next week. That'll be my last job." It was a job with a bunch of my friends. I was so excited. It was going to be like last hurrah. And
It
that
got
job
canceled,
got canceled.
didn't it?
So I never got to do it. And then I didn't get a picture with the slate. I was so mad. I was
Oh,
like freelance to just kick me out the door. Like,
yep. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
And I did have people ask if I was going to work weekends, if I was going to try to do both. And I know other people in the other episodes have talked about keep working in the film industry while you're doing this transition because money.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to it's hard to fund your new career dream. That's very true. It was impossible for me to really balance that. I didn't see a way to get any kind of steady weekend work, but also be a grad student. And right away, I was really active in getting internships and part-time work and trying to fill all of those work experience quotas that you need when you graduate. Otherwise, you don't have any kind of competitiveness in the job market. So right away, I think I did 3 internships that first year. And then
Were
and
those
then I
pay?
went,
Do they pay for internships? No.
it
Maybe
depends on
now they do.
it depends on the department. Special collections is always understaffed and underfunded, unfortunately. And so every internship I have done in special collections has been unpaid. I have done some part-time student work that was paid. But yes, actually now some of the things that I have done in the past now are paid, which I'm so glad to hear. I feel very strongly that internships should be paid always.
Right.
But yeah, in my case, I was very lucky that I was in a 2-income household that I could survive this way. And that's not always the
Mm-hmm.
case. So I always make sure to acknowledge that my path is not possible for every situation because I was lucky to have that. Yeah, so I did a 2-year master's program at UCLA, same degree as Jen O'Leary, library and information science. And I focused on special collections librarianship and rare books I basically tried to find as many experiences in special collections libraries as possible. So I would just cold email all these archivists and librarians all over the city. It's like, can I volunteer? Can I learn how to do anything for you? I need to get into these rooms and work with these materials. And it really worked out for me very well. People were very open to that. People were very willing to take someone they didn't even know because I was eager to do it, which was really nice. And I mean, since it was free, of course.
Right. We'll take your excited enthusiasm.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember when you were talking about leaving, and then I think you had started posting online. So Kathryn and I don't even remember what jobs we day played together,
No
probably with Goose on something, or, those guys. I definitely got in with those guys a little bit. And I pretty much, my entire career was a day player. I did a couple like full seasons of things, but I did enjoy day playing. It was pretty, but also, freelance is freelance.
It's a sweet gig if you can get it. If
I can work 3 days a week and still make a decent living. Yeah. But I remember, I think you had posted like, I'm leaving and I'm studying rare books. I was like, okay, like how? That's such a leap from being in film.
Yeah.
But I also, when you said you're moving to London, and like, can you talk a little bit about, you were on a trajectory. I just wanted to interject that we have worked together, and I remember when this was happening, and I was very intrigued. It was just like, it's so cool to see. There's something about people in film, like I'm finding this too. I've been kind of working in the service industry, that everybody has just like, they're all onions. There's layers to people, and like, no one's just a camera assistant. No one's just a, sound person. No one's just an art department person. Like, there's just layers. And so it was really fun to see the excitement that you had over, rare books and I think like Renaissance fairs, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We'll get to how that becomes part of my job too.
Ooh, yay.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many hobbies. I love to learn new things. I've always had this curiosity of, oh, I want to learn how to do that. Oh, that sounds interesting. Why don't I learn how to do that? So I have a lot of hobbies, and history is always one of those hobbies. In LA, I used to give historical house tours at Victorian houses in costume.
Right. That's right. I remember that. Okay. Yeah.
And then I also gave tours at the Getty Villa, architecture and garden tours there. So I love engaging with the public who were hoping to learn history. That was what I really loved. And it was really hard at first when I was looking at programs. I also thought about doing a museum studies program instead, because that was a little more familiar than the libraries one, because I hadn't really engaged with the university library as a film student. I did some, but not near as much as you would if you were an English student or literature, or if you were if you were in the library a lot using the materials. And I was always out shooting things all the time on location with my undergrad program. So I wasn't really overly familiar with the university library. I did like to go there sometimes and just walk around because it was beautiful, but that's just library appreciation. So I was doing all these internships, and I was really proactive about finding as much work experience as possible, trying to fill all these different types of skills, like learning some cataloging, learning some archival processing, learning some teaching, learning all these different aspects. And while I was in school, I interviewed so many librarians and archivists in LA. I just cold emailed I would look up I had no business doing this. I would look up the highest ranking person in every institution I could find, and I would just email them. And I was like, hi, can I talk to you about your job and how you got there? And everybody said yes.
That's awesome. I love that. There's such a fear of people you're human beings. Like, they're human. They're going to be excited if someone is interested in them. Like, they're going to, yeah. And if they're not the right person for you to, you don't want to work for that person.
Yeah,
So,
I tried to pick different types of professions. So I interviewed curators at the Getty, I interviewed archivists at universities, I interviewed librarians at smaller, like private libraries, all kinds of stuff. I tried to find as many diverse types within that field so then I could learn what those jobs do and what titles they have and what that means, where they came from, what kind of experience they had. I was doing all this research so I could form my own career in like an intentional way. So that when I graduated, I could be competitive right away because I know that in special collections, especially, the jobs are disappearing and they have less money and it's getting harder and harder to get in and people are more and more qualified. Many special collections librarians have 2 master's degrees and many special collections librarians have PhDs. They're very, very intelligent, very qualified people. And I knew I was going to have to compete with that straight out as a fresh grad. And that was something I was trying to handle while I was in school. But I graduated in 2020. So that was unexpected.
right.
All of the jobs got frozen, all the university budgets got frozen. So I was really struggling to find anything. I worked contract and part-time jobs for, I think, 2 years, different things as anything I could find in libraries, anything. I worked mostly circulation and in university research positions. It sort of filled the time, but was paying almost nothing and wasn't really what I wanted to do. But it was also skills building as well, customer service, working on websites, all kinds of little things. So I was still trying to be intentional about adding things to my resume. So yeah, that was 2 years of that. And then also while the pandemic was just kind of ramping up in May, I had already decided I wanted to do this, but then this really became something that was useful. I decided I wanted to start teaching online workshops in palaeography, which is the study of historical handwriting. So I started doing that. I just started it. I got like one wonderful librarian at one of my internships encouraged me. She was like, "Yeah, you should do that. That sounds great." So I held this big long workshop just as practice, and I invited everyone, family, friends, everyone. And I had children, I had my mom, I had all kinds of people, I had classmates, I had my professors, all kinds of people participate. It was so much fun.
That's
And
so
that was
cool.
sort of, it was great. And it worked really well. And that I learned a lot from that. And then from that, this was my little side hustle sort of on a minor scale where I would look up the class catalogs for all the universities in LA, like in like the central area. I would find classes that were going on in the fall or the spring that I thought could use a presentation that I knew how to give. And so then I would just cold email the professor and I would say, I would love to give your students a presentation about medieval manuscript production or early printed book production or whatever I thought might fit in. And sometimes it was paleography. I think I've done like 15 paleography workshops and 10 other book history related workshops. And all of it was online because these students couldn't go to the library. So they couldn't see any of these historical items. And I was sort of bringing that librarian knowledge to them so they could get excited about going to special collections once they were allowed to get back in.
You were able to monetize this through like the university would pay for that or the professor
No,
would?
I was totally independent. Once I graduated, didn't have any affiliation at all. And the first year I did them all for free. And then the second year I was able to charge for them. And now I still do these and now I do charge for them. I don't do near as many now. And now I haven't done any since I've been working full time as a librarian, but they're very fulfilling. I get really great feedback from wonderful people and I still do them for community organizations like San Francisco Center for the Book is a great organization that I like to partner with, and I've done a bunch of lectures for them and workshops. So yeah, I still love to do it, and it kind of came out of the pandemic. So that was something I might have not even thought of doing, except that everything was suddenly online. So I had to do that.
Yeah. Well, that also, you have a wider reach that way too. You're not having to be in the physical space.
Yeah, it was something that people didn't really think as much about, teaching paleography digitally. And so I wanted to show that it was very possible and useful that way. Um, so yeah, that's been really rewarding as well. So I've brought that along with me. And then so the final leg of this career trajectory. I know it's long. I'm
Wait,
sorry.
I want to go back really quick. So,
Okay.
um, like how you monetized it, like who was paying for,
Mhm.
was it like, individual students paid for the workshop, or was it like somebody like a bookstore or whatever paid,
So in the beginning, it was university professors who had a small amount of budget for guest speakers and that kind of thing. So I was considered a guest lecturer, and they would send me or I would send them an invoice, and it would come out of their university budget. And then I had to sort of figure out how much they were expecting to pay. And I was new too, so I didn't ask for much because I was learning, and that's fair. And then I was also reaching out to the community organizations, like I mentioned, San Francisco Center for the Book. And I think there was another one similar to that. And they had budgets already in place for lecturers and workshop teachers. So they sort of told me, like, would you be willing to come in for this amount of money? And sometimes they do so more than one Sunday or something, and then they sort of work out with me how much that is worth. So it's a little negotiable, but a lot of these organizations kind of work with a very strict annual budget, and this is how much they have for their events, and that's kind of it was never enough to like live on or anything. It was definitely I think I did like 6 or 8 a year. So it's definitely just like a side thing that I really enjoyed doing, and a little bit of
supplemental
money.
income. Yeah.
But yeah, and now that people can go back into the library, I feel like the need for that is less important, but it's also still very popular. Like when I do them, that we always have a full group. We always have people who, and coming from everywhere, we never know what kind of participant we're going to get. Sometimes they're students, sometimes they're independent researchers. We never know their interests, and when I give them my feedback survey, I get to hear all these great stories about where they came from and why they decided to take the workshops. So that's been really cool. It's been a really rewarding thing. I love doing it.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so continue on your next steps. Sorry, I just had to
No,
because
it's
we
okay.
are talking about, how do you do the things? So yeah.
Yeah, that was just something I sort of thought of as something I would enjoy, because I also knew that if I was going to be applying for jobs that included instruction, that was a great example of my skills and my independence, and my ability to create content on my own with no resources. I just had the internet and my own books because I wasn't affiliated with anyone.
Mhm.
But the internet is full of amazing digitized materials now. So I was really fortunate that like the British Library has a great library of digitized manuscripts, and there were the Huntington Library as well. Like
I love
there's
the honey.
resources there that I used. Yes. Oh, me too. So I actually realized this really early, 1 year through my UCLA program. I realized that special collections librarians have multiple degrees, and it was going to be difficult for me to advance without a second degree. It's not impossible. I don't want to say that special collections librarians have to have other qualifications, because they don't. And they can learn on the job and be amazing at their jobs. I know lots of librarians like that. But I had always wanted a history degree. That was just like a point of pride for me to have studied history for a year or two, like specifically. I did a history minor in undergrad, and I missed taking history classes, and I thought that would be really exciting. So I knew that was going to happen to me at some point, and I was hoping that I was going to work for a little while before I was going to have to go back to school again. I love to learn, but I don't like writing papers, so I'm not I'm not a huge fan of the whole program as a unit. But I do love to learn, so I do go to a lot of lectures even now. So my husband and I had been talking about we don't want to live in LA forever. Where would we go? We were applying for jobs in Boston and San Francisco because those are our favorite places. We looked other places. Nothing was really a good balance of things for me, and then a film industry for him. So we decided London was always the top of our list. We had been before. I lived there for 2 months in 2019 as a student. I took classes there and I interned at Christie's there.
Cool.
It was really a magical summer. I learned so much. It was so wonderful. And fell in love with the city all over again.
Good
And
timing on 2019 and not.
I know, right? I did
Yeah.
this exactly right. So lucky. So we decided, okay, if we're going to do this, how can we do this? It's hard to move abroad. The UK is every year cracking down more and more on immigration and who can get what visas. So we thought, okay, if I want to get a degree in history, what kind of history? It seems obvious to me that I should do medieval history because that's what all my books are about.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to study medieval England, why not study it in England? That seems practical.
And being able to like go see the places that they're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
actually
pretty
go
cool.
and visit the palaces, the cathedrals, walk these streets that have existed for 1,000 years. Um, I mean, the medieval studies programs in the US are not as prevalent anyway, because it's not history that's immediate to the country. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes sense. Also, university in the US is very, very expensive, and master's programs are 2 years, so double what it would cost in London to get a master's. Master's programs in the UK are 1 year. Um, so it's not cheap, but you're only paying for one instead of two. So London is an expensive city, but so is LA. It was not really that much of a shock for us. We were like, yeah, well, LA is expensive too. You just get less space, basically.
Right.
So we were excited about London. We wanted to figure out how to get here, and I thought, well, a full-time student is the way a lot of people move to London. A lot of Americans do master's programs in
That's the
London.
easiest way to get a visa, right?
Yeah, it's the
Mm-hmm.
quickest. It's you don't have to prove a lot. You just have to get accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So I again did my informational interviews. I talked to 2 different librarians who did master's programs in the UK. Actually, 3. I just thought of another person. 3, and I wanted to hear about their experience, how they picked their university, that kind of thing. So I wasn't sure what program I wanted to do. I ended up applying to 4 universities in the UK. And I was very lucky. I got accepted into all 4 of them, which was really
Oh,
nice.
congratulations.
I felt really flattered by that, because I didn't have any kind of history education. It was just the background in special collections, I'm sure, was a huge bonus for them. They could see where I was coming from.
Well, and you did your homework. It sounds like you know what you want and you go for it, which is really admirable and inspirational.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really did jump for this one. So I got to pick which one I wanted, and I picked one in central London. It felt like the right location and a huge university with tons of resources and access to the British Library, which was great. I studied a lot of manuscripts there while I was in school. So we knew we were moving by January of 2022, and then I was going to be starting school in September. So that was it felt like all of a sudden this is happening. So that move was very unique because most people I know either go as a student single or go already with a job offer. So I was moving as a student. Peter was unemployed when we moved here. He had applied for some jobs here, but of course it's competitive. I think it's hard to get a job here if you don't already live here, unless you have like a company transfer or in the film industry. He knew he was going to be switching departments, so that's tough.
And they
So
couldn't sponsor a worker's visa for him, right?
he did interview places that did. So we knew that was possible, and that was our long-term plan, is that we got here on a full-time student visa, and then we could stay here because of his sponsorship. So my program was 1 year, and in this summer last year, we switched from my full-time student visa to his work visa because his company had agreed to sponsor him. And so now I'm a spouse on his visa. I am not sponsored. So I can work as almost anything. The
That's great.
agreement, the agreement is I can't be a dentist and I can't be a sports coach.
What? No Ted Lassoing for you.
I know my dreams are dashed. I live so close to Richmond too. I'm just like,
Oh,
oh, I could have had this moment. Yeah, that's for
that's
some reason
very
in the rules.
oddly specific, and now
I
I want to
know.
research why.
It's very strange, but I have no idea. I have a great
It's
dentist. I have no idea what
yeah.
it is. So yeah, so we're now on his visa. And in May, actually, yes, in December, I started working as a gallery assistant at an antiquarian map dealer. Um,
Oh my God, say more. What is that?
it was kind of a horizontal move from what I was expecting, but I knew I was going to have to work at an entry level position because I was really starting all over in a new field, in a new country. I knew that someone was going to have to take a chance on me as letting me do this entry level type of work. So as a gallery assistant, I worked reception desk and then customer service for an antiquarian map dealer who is just this amazing map shop in South Kensington. They have 10,000 maps in the shop, and it's all browsable, so anyone can just hop in and look through the maps. So I got to see an incredible amount of historical maps, and I got to learn all about them. And my colleagues were really wonderful and supportive, so they taught me all about them. And I did a lot of customer interaction, which was really good. And then some like admin and stuff too, so that was good. And I was unfortunately only there for 4 months because this amazing position opened up at the British Library. There were 5 open positions in reference, and I couldn't have predicted that was going to happen. They rarely hire that many people all at once, so I was like, this is my chance. I have to apply for this. So I applied, not knowing what kind of reference I would be doing, but the British Library is amazing, and I was like, any way I can get in, that would be great. And I really know that I would enjoy doing reference work. So when I got hired, my offer was a reference specialist for rare books, which was a dream come true.
Perfect.
They had placed me without me really knowing that was available. They put me in rare books. And then when I showed up on the first day, they were like, actually, because of the way that our structure is and your background, we're going to put you in manuscripts, and you're going to be learning rare books, maps, and manuscripts, and you're going to be a special collections reference librarian. So you're going to be doing all 3. And I was
Oh
like,
my
it
God,
just keeps,
Kathryn, that's like a dream for
I know,
you.
it
That's
just keeps getting better and
amazing.
better. So that's now what I'm doing. So I'm helping researchers, as I said before. I get to see such amazing stuff every day. It's been so cool. I really love my job. They my team leader asked me, she's like, if you feel good about your podcast, can we listen to it?
Oh, I Please listen. Yes.
I was like, I'm sure. Yeah, you can totally listen to it. I was like, you know me though, so I don't know if it's going to be helpful for you to listen to it, but
Well, they
it
probably
was
don't know
very
as much
sweet.
about your history in film,
I
right?
guess not. Yeah.
Yeah,
So shout out to my BL colleagues.
that's awesome.
They're really wonderful. Everybody's been really great. So yeah, that's my whole path.
Um, what would you say, like, what are some of the skills that you think transferred over to finding this career? And then, are there similarities between what you did on set that you find in what you do now?
Yes. So skills that transferred, I would say networking. Because when you start in the film industry, you have to hustle so hard. You
Oh,
have to
yeah.
shake every hand. I mean, it took me years to stop shaking everybody's hand because people were like weirded out by this librarian who's always shaking hands with people. I was like, no, it's a film industry thing. I'm sorry. It's
And
just
it might be an
nuts.
American thing too.
I don't know. I was just like, that's not normally what people do, but I was always doing it because I had to be so good at meeting new people and like immediately forging relationships. And networking is the most important part of a film career. It's not technical skills, it's not talent, it's networking, which is
Yeah.
crazy, but I feel that that's true. So I think that's something that has really helped me. That I have always just pushed really hard to take every opportunity, meet every person I can, learn about their lives, what they've been doing. If I can be involved, just be very motivated to go out and find opportunities because things don't just fall in your lap.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of work to find those dreams. And it was very hard to get into the film industry. It was so much work, physical and mental. And it was just as hard to get into this field of librarianship. Had to work very hard to find these opportunities. So I think the film industry really prepared me. And my friend Angela always says this. Always says that in the freelance world, you have to be so resilient. And I've really kept the resilience as I've moved on, is that you can't let rejection bother you. You just have to keep pushing. Don't take anything personal. You just have to keep trying more things, more
That's so
options.
hard. It's so
I know
hard.
it's exhausting. It's
Yeah.
a lot of energy. When you're applying for jobs and not even getting responses, it's a lot of energy.
Hmm.
Luckily, in the UK, almost everyone responds with a rejection. They don't ghost you. In the US, when I was applying for library jobs, a majority of people would just never respond. So that was
Yeah.
also very discouraging. So keeping that spirit up and the enthusiasm is really what has carried me through. And also, I have a wonderful supportive partner, which literally I would never have done any of this if I couldn't have
Yeah.
had his love and support. It's just been um, integral in this whole process. But yeah, I think the motivation, the enthusiasm, the drive of just trying to plan out what you want to do and going for it. And I know everybody in film also has to have that drive. So I just transferred that to my next career move.
That's awesome. And were you scared when you were deciding to leave? Like, was there any fear there, or were you just like, I need to go?
I think I was so excited. Just like when we moved here, I wasn't really scared. I was just so excited. Yeah, I think it was sad to leave, but I knew it was right for me. I knew it was time. I didn't want to burn out and be bitter and burn bridges and end up being more unhappy or depressed. I wanted to, I mean, leave sort of on a high note. That last year I had a slow year, so it sort of like it confirmed for me that it was time for me to move on.
Hmm.
But no, I don't think I wasn't really afraid because I think once you move in your car across the country, like everything else is like, oh yeah, I could do this. I could try to do something else. I can go for it. I think that really
Yeah.
made me so much more brave, that big jump. It now feels so far away. And it's like, did we ever really do that? That's crazy.
I know. Yeah, I definitely, when I packed my car up and moved to LA, I had nothing. I had no, I think I was in the, I moved into an apartment and then overdrew my account. And then was like in the red. And luckily, I had family that helped a little bit, but I still had to figure it
Mhm.
out. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
like,
those
how did
support
I
systems.
now if my bank account gets below a certain level, I'm like, how did I do this? How did I do this before? And it's like you have to remember like you're
Yeah.
resilient.
Yeah, I think youth also helps with that.
It sure does.
I think doing the jump again, I had more perspective. I had more confidence in myself. But then there's the other edge of that is the older you get, the more set in your ways. It does make you more fearful of, can I really manage this? Am I really able to do something else? Um, I think since I'm someone who always enjoys doing new things, it's exciting for me. I'm not really good at like staying in one place or being resting on my laurels. So I'm always trying to make more things happen. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I was like never fearful because of course, like there's always
Right. Change is
doubts
scary.
and things. Yeah, like there's always this am I making the right choice? Is this the final choice? Am I gonna have regret doing this? Like you have to just take your judgment, trust your judgment. But yeah, I think it was mostly just exciting to just go off in a totally different direction. And I mean, like I said, all my books are medieval history books. Like this fits me so well now that I'm so grateful that I pushed through it because it
Very
was
cool.
very difficult and it's been so rewarding.
That's awesome. Is there anything you miss about set though?
Oh my gosh, no, I loved working on set. I miss it. I miss it all the time when I watch movies. I mean, Peter and we watch so many movies. We watch so much TV. Like we're so in it. And I'm really glad that I spent my 20s doing that. It was awesome. What a cool career.
Yeah.
And like a second gets to be like the flashy one with the slate. Like
Yeah. Right next to the
everybody knows.
actors.
Yeah, everybody knows about that. So, oh yeah, I loved being on set. That was so magical for me. Um, and I love watching behind the scenes stuff and seeing how everything's made. And I actually really enjoyed Fall Guy because it was
I loved Fall Guy.
I
What
love
a
seeing movies about
fun.
movies.
My mouth, like I took my dad, it was a good like Father's Day thing to take my
Uh-huh.
dad to.
Cute.
And I think that my mouth hung open the whole time just thinking about like we're seeing these stunts, but they were doing these stunts. How did they do this? Like, and
That
I know how they did
one
it, but it's still like,
that one they were going down the street and the thing they were on was turning in the
yes,
road.
the car, yes, that was, I was just like, oh my God, I hope no one died on this movie. That is intense.
Incredible. Yeah, I love movies about movies. I love having that history. I love having been part of
And
that.
knowing a little bit about how the,
Yeah,
sausage gets
yeah.
made. Yeah.
Such an appreciation for it. Like if you have never been in the film industry, you can never imagine how much work goes into every little thing. And I feel like I have such an appreciation for it. And I never worked on like something gigantic either. So I can't even imagine something so huge, like blockbuster level planning and execution. So yes, I do love thinking about all the things that I got to be part of. That was really fun and really rewarding. I know that I would have been unhappy if I had continued doing it, but I'm so glad that I got to spend my 20s that way.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what's your life like now? Like what did
Yeah.
you gain by changing careers?
Oh, I get to go to work at 9 and I get to come home at 5.
Ugh,
It's lovely.
you don't work
I
12-hour days in a library?
Well, my husband also does not work 12-hour days in the film industry. It's something beautiful about the UK environment is that people don't glorify the overwork mentality as much. I mean, I'm sure there's still industries where that's
Yeah,
normal.
the movie I worked on in Cyprus was run
Mhm.
by Americans, so of course we did
Mhm.
12-hour days, but I did work with folks from Poland and from England, and a couple, I think the camera department alone had 12 different countries represented,
Wow.
24 total on set.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
and a lot of them were like, yeah, at 8 hours, they have to come around and ask every single person if they're okay to
Hmm.
go over. And there's no punishment if someone's like, no, I'm not going to go over. You just don't go over.
Yeah.
And they plan to do it the next day. If everybody is on board, then they'll do it. And
Hmm.
I love that it's an actual democracy on those sets.
Yeah, it's really refreshing. That's something I really needed to have. I needed time away from, I like going to a place of work, and then I like having a different place for the rest of my life. So that's been really nice. I take the train to work, so that's great. I don't have to sit in traffic. I don't get to listen to as many podcasts now as I did when I would sit in LA traffic, but
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a commute, but it's a commute where you don't have to be paying attention because you're not driving the car. And I definitely don't miss the hours and hours of sitting on the 405, sitting on the 101. I miss being part of that machine, that camera department machine, that we all just were reading each other's minds and knowing exactly what everybody needs. And that's like a really special thing.
It really is. Yeah.
It's really hard to like put it into a resume that you're good at that. But basically I have a line. I'm like, I don't even know how to explain how good you have to be at multitasking to be a second AC. You have to be
Well,
so
here's the
good
thing.
at
No
it.
one's really good at multitasking, but you can juggle multiple things.
You have to know your priority list really well.
You also just, it always comes with experience. I always say, like, when the cameras, a lot of cameras now have internal neutral density. So when the
Hmm.
sun is going down, you can press a button now instead of having to like have physical filters ready to change.
Uh-huh.
But that was one thing I learned very quickly. It was like, oh, people are panicking. It's either a kid is about to become a pumpkin, meaning that they can't work anymore and we have to hurry up and get their coverage before they, it's a violation of law, or the sun is going down. So like people are being insane. My job is to be close and ready with all of the things that could possibly be needed. Yeah.
Something else that my life is like now is that I feel really valued for my experience in my education. My position is different day to day because I answer a lot of inquiries from researchers who are studying anything from archives that are 20 years old to manuscripts that are papyrus that's 2,000 years old. We have papyrus in our collection that we can also bring out for researchers and help them with. So I love the variety, and I love the responsibility that I have, that I can help researchers navigate the library, find things they never would have been able to find on their own. That makes me feel really good that I've helped them out, and that in my job I've been training and learning for 4 years, 6 years now, and I feel like I get to use that knowledge to help others. And that was the point of me becoming a librarian. So it's very rewarding and fulfilling, and that's something that I always felt as a camera assistant that I never knew quite enough, and that I was never an
Mm.
expert, and that I never voluntarily pursued more technical knowledge. I did it because I had to do it, not because I was obsessed with cameras or obsessed with learning all these things about monitors. Like I know people who are in love with those things, and they're in the
Right.
right place. And I always felt like that was something that I did because I knew I was supposed to, not because I was interested. And this career, I feel like it's not a chore for me to learn more about my job, um, and to do the professional development and improve in my responsibilities. It's exciting, and it's a good challenge. So I feel like that's a really good indicator I'm in the right spot.
That looks good on you. You've got such a big smile on your face when you're talking about it.
Oh,
Like you can tell that you love what you do. I'm so
oh,
happy for
good.
you. That's so awesome.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? or anything I didn't ask that you think I should have?
Well, I think that the question about what skills are transferable is a good question because not everyone is going to have another passion that just happens to work out with all of these other things that have worked out. Sometimes you're going to go to something that's more similar because that makes sense, and that's great. That means that the transition will hopefully be smoother, that you will know more sooner, and that you won't have to do two master's degrees and move to a different country to to find your bliss. That definitely isn't for everyone. So I think it's really important to, if you're thinking about a different career, to sit down and just list all the skills you know you have. Someone else mentioned in one of your episodes, it was so hard to write a resume. And I also had that problem where I was like, what am I good at? I don't know. What else can I do? I can be a photography assistant. I've shot weddings. Like, am I going to do something film related? I have other friends who are wrestling with this right now, struggling with the current climate of the film industry. What else can I do? What other jobs are out there that I can transfer my skills to? And there's so many soft skills on set that you use all the time, that if you're able to demonstrate in an interview, give me an example of a time that you did this, they don't care if it's on set, as long as it's a strong example. So all those people skills, all of those organizational skills, all that stuff is transferable and really important in a lot, if not most jobs. So you have a lot more in your arsenal than you think you do.
Yeah. And I would say, because it's important to write those things down because sometimes I blank. Like 12 years of being a camera assistant, and you try to ask me one example of something, and I forget what shows I've worked on, let alone one specific time that something,
definitely,
that I saved the day, or, it's like, it's always a team effort. So it's never like, me, like, I brought the monitor. Like, it's so writing that stuff down is really important so that you can have it in your arsenal when you are asked to those questions.
Especially interactions where there's a problem and you helped fix it. People love to know about how you handle challenges. I've always struggled with trying to find specific examples of that.
Me too.
But it happens all the time, but it's more minor. It's not like a huge blowout or something that you've mitigated, but like it's the smaller day-to-day, like dealing with the lots of different personalities and learn. And the film industry, like you meet new people every day and you're like, okay, I need to get along and work well with all of these different people who all have different expectations about what this day is going to be like. And 98% of the time, everything is pretty good. Everyone gets along. Everybody is able to function well without having known anyone 24 hours earlier.
Right.
Which is pretty miraculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty fun, especially when you're all trying to achieve the same goal. And if you're all on the same team.
It's incredible teamwork. Yeah. It's a huge example of how people can really like come together to make something happen. So yeah, all of those examples are definitely transferable. And then technical things are also transferable too. But yeah, it's hard to sort of look at the world and be like, what else do I want to do? What do I like? What can I do without, if you can't afford to go back to school, if you don't have time to go back to school, if it doesn't work in your life, if you don't want to go back to school, like there's got to be other options. How do I approach them? My informational interviews have been so helpful. I learned so much from these people and learned what I needed from what they've already done. So I can't recommend that enough. If somebody has a job you think sounds cool, just ask them if they can get a coffee with you for 30 minutes and you could hear about their job and what kinds of skills that they have and what kinds of things they would look for if they were hiring someone for that position, that kind of thing.
That's such great advice. It's so important, and people love talking about themselves, not in an egotistical way always, but like, it's flattering to be asked to learn about what it is that
People
you
want to
do.
help
And
out other
yeah.
people. They like the idea of saying, oh, I went through this, so I can guide you through this.
And you might find that you don't like what they do, and that might not be
Yeah,
the route that you
definitely.
want to go. So you can at least mark something off of your list of like, okay, maybe I don't want to do that, but maybe I can think about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that happened to me too. There were people within the library field doing jobs. I was like, I don't think I'd like that. I think I would get lonely working all alone in an archive. I'm too extroverted to be a cataloger full time. Like there were just certain things I knew from experience or talking to people who did those jobs that I knew myself. And I was like, yeah, I would probably enjoy it for a short time, but then it wouldn't be a long-term solution. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So my last question is,
Mhm.
would you ever go back to the film industry? I think I know the answer.
I definitely am not returning to the film industry, but I've been thinking about this today with one of the other episodes. One of the other interviewees said you can always go back, and I don't know if that's true.
Oh, JR said that, yeah.
I think it depends on your department. I think I'd have to start all over again as at least a camera PA. I think it would be
No,
so
Kathryn,
hard.
you would not have to start over as a
In the
camera
UK,
PA.
I don't know anybody. I think it would be
I know people
really
there
hard.
if you wanted to, but I think that you're doing great and you don't need to go
No,
back.
there's really no scenario that would be in my future. I'm not I mean, I'm not saying in 15 years I might find something else that is exciting that I might want to pursue. But I think my film career is neatly wrapped away in a little box. And
I could see you being a consultant on a project about rare books.
I've had people tell me, they're like, you should do consulting for historical films.
I mean, you don't have to be on set for 14 hours. You could
All I can
probably get paid
say,
very well.
all I can say is here's my one tip. If you're gonna do a scene where you're handling historical materials, you probably don't want to wear white gloves. Most of the time, we don't wear white gloves.
I almost asked you about this earlier. I was like, do you bring out the white gloves to bring out the
Everybody
papyrus?
does.
What do you use to handle those rare items?
So it depends on what it's made of. So the majority of things that I handle and see day to day are paper leather bound books or parchment leather bound books. And parchment is animal skin. You would have no idea looking or touching it that it's animal skin. It's stretched and cleaned in such a way that it's kind of soft and it looks like paper. So though paper and parchment are very safe to handle with clean, dry hands. And that's what we always tell everyone. There's signs in the library that says you can handle these things with clean, dry hands. Papyrus, the papyrus at the BL is almost exclusively packaged in between two glass plates. So you can handle the plates and look at both sides of it without touching the papyrus, because papyrus is very, very fragile and can crumble and it's very old. If you're handling stone or metal or film, that's when you wear the gloves, because the oils, even the little bits of oils, can discolor and damage those things. They react very quickly, as opposed to paper and parchment, which will react over time if you're touching it over and over and over, but they're much more stable as material. So that's your book history lesson for the day.
I love it. Kathryn Brunet, thank you so much for taking so much time. You were so worried about not having anything to talk about, and you went above and beyond, and I just loved.
I hope it was helpful.
It was so helpful. You must be Irish. Us Irish are always like, I don't know if I gave you anything, even though you just gave like the best knowledge.
I'm a Midwesterner. I'm always going to make sure.
Yeah.
At heart. And I'm married to a Minnesotan. So we
always
have.
Yeah. They're the sweetest.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun to talk to you and see how you're doing and see your face again.
Yeah, it's so good to see you again too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, this was such a treat. I'm glad that you reached out.
Said I'm moving, hey, moving.
Company Move is produced by me, Rennie Pollock, and is produced and edited by Robin Lavecchio. Thanks to Selena Persiani for designing our graphics. Our theme music was written by Cliff Beach and performed by Cliff Beach and Alex Nestor. You can follow Cliff on Spotify. Our interstitial music was composed and performed by Gabe Rosen. A special thank you to Keaton Susky for naming our podcast. Have questions, suggestions, or want to be a guest? Write us at companymovepod@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at companymovepod. Please follow and rate us on whatever platform you listen to us on. That's a wrap for this week, y'all. Thanks for listening. Come on back next week for a new episode of the Company Move podcast.